Hello.
Hi.
Oh, I'm already figuring out the wonders of Zoom. It's 2021 and we haven't figured it out yet. Hey there, it is the NPR Politics Podcast After Dark. That is why Ayesha, Sue, and I are all wearing sequins because it is after dark. I'm Tamara Keith. I cover the White House.
I'm Ayesha Rascoe. I also cover the White House.
I am Franco Ordoñez. I also cover the White House.
And I'm Susan Davis. I cover Congress.
Franco, you didn't get the memo.
No, he didn't.
That's all right, though.
He did. Where are the rhinestones? No.
You needed to bedazzle that sport jacket.
Yes.
I should have had something.
At least a tuxedo t-shirt underneath the blazer next time.
You should have taken some cues from the men at the Oscars. They were
tough panel. I hope the audience questions are easier.
So in addition to this crew we have here, we will be joined later on by the one, the only Ron Elving. So thank you all for joining us tonight. We really miss seeing you at our live shows and we can't wait to safely do them in person again. I really hope sometime this year, but I don't know if we're allowed to hope yet. But until then, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We have a very big evening planned tonight. The kids are asleep, at least one of mine, and the other one might come naked at any moment. And we are ready to rock and roll. We're going to do a little news, then we're going to take your questions and finish with a super round of Can't Let It Go, where we share what we just can't stop thinking about, politics or otherwise, from the first 100 days. Feel free, as you already are, to use the chat to let us know where you're tuning in from, what you're excited about or dreading or whatever. We do realize that it isn't really after dark for some of you, so thank you for coming before dark. Also, you can submit a question for the Q&A section and do that using the Q&A box. So now onto the content. President Biden is closing in on his first 100 days in office. Today is actually his 98th day, so we are super close. We would have been even closer if the president had not scheduled an address to a joint session of Congress for tomorrow night. It's like a State of the Union, except for the first 100 days. So we thought we would talk tonight about what President Biden has accomplished, what he hasn't, and also how to think about tomorrow's speech. In honor of tonight's theme, we thought we would try to sum up President Biden's first 100 days in 100 seconds. So let's get the timer up on the screen. This is a test. The four of us will collectively have 100 seconds to each go through and shout out the biggest moments and themes from the last 100 days. We each have to say something before passing to the next person, and we will do this until the time runs out. I will start, then it'll be Ayesha, then Franco, then Sue. And while we do this, please share what you think the biggest moments were in the chat. All right, ready, set, go. I guess I go first. 200 million. That is 200 million shots in arms in the first 100 days. President Biden has had a history now of under-promising and over-delivering. And I believe it's now 39% of adults who are 100% fully vaccinated here in the US, which is quite a number.
Equity, equity, equity. That is the word of the day for the Biden administration. They want to talk about equity in the vaccines, racial equity, economic equity, and also gender equity. This is what they're talking about. They're saying they're going to make it a part of the very fabric of government. We will see whether that actually happens.
Like Ayesha and Tam said, they wanted to talk about equity. They wanted to talk about the pandemic. What they ended up talking about more than they did want was the border and the crisis. It was a huge, huge challenge for this administration and the most disruptive to its agenda these first 100 days.
I think it's really about the $1.9 trillion passed. I mean, largest economic stimulus package in the history of the country. And it passed through Congress with barely a fight, a huge accomplishment in the first 100 days.
I'm going to add one more word, action. There have been so many executive orders, executive actions, presidential memoranda, so many things, including some administrative actions on guns. That was something the White House maybe wasn't exactly planning to be part of their first 100 days, but it became that way.
And the dog that keeps fighting everybody.
Oh, Afghanistan.
Oh, yeah.
The U.S. is getting out of Afghanistan after 20 years. That's kind of big.
All right. Well, luckily we have more than 100 seconds to unpack all of this. So let's get into this. Ayesha, don't let us forget about Afghanistan, but let's start with the big speech tomorrow night, a joint address to pitch President Biden's $2 trillion infrastructure plan and the American Families Plan, which they are also pitching as an infrastructure plan or part 2 of the infrastructure plan. All right, what can we expect to hear about those proposals? And is it all infrastructure? Is that a case that he's going to make tomorrow night?
It seems like they've kind of backed away from that, right? White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki has talked about the families plan and said it's not infrastructure, it is something for families. But they have made this argument that these are once in a generation investments, whether it's in infrastructure, even though they did have a very broad definition of infrastructure, and also this, in these things that they want to do to help family, whether it's childcare or education. They're supposed to roll out the details of that these are these once in a generation investments that will change the way, I guess, America works, the economy, boost the economy in a way that it will have long-term impact, right?
Yeah. So what I'm wondering, Sue, is they're talking about a very big package or a big 2-part thing. They've already passed a $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill. With that one, it never seemed like there was that much flexibility. I mean, there's all of this talk of bipartisanship and what the definition of bipartisanship is.
Yeah.
So how do you see this proceeding?
It's a great question. I mean, I think what the administration is trying to do is build off of that $1.9 trillion. And one of the most fascinating things I think we're seeing happening is Joe Biden, who was the moderate, right, in the 2020 campaign, has become potentially the sort of hero of a lot of progressive causes. This is not exactly the administration that I think a lot of people were anticipating from Joe Biden, and certainly not even a lot of Democrats on Capitol Hill who preferred other candidates in that primary race. I think what Democrats are trying to do more broadly, and they're kind of open about this, is they saw the pandemic as an opportunity to really redefine how the country looks at government and what the government can do for you. And Bernie Sanders said this upon passing the $1.9 trillion bill, that it's trying to reinvigorate the trust relationship that the Americans have with their government. And I think that that's what they're trying to do here. I mean, you look at this American Families Plan, it's radically redefining life in this country. It's universal pre-K, it's money for childcare, it's free community college. I mean, it's just kind of like a wish list of stuff that people have long said could make life better for people in this country. How they get there is going to be real hard, because I don't think you're going to get probably any Republican support for this stuff. There's no indication that there's any momentum building on the right to get behind it. And as we've said ad nauseum in the podcast, 50-50 Senate, 3 votes in the House. It's going to require such extreme party unity to do some of the biggest legislative lifting that I have seen in 20 years covering Congress. I legitimately don't know how they're going to do it. And if they do happen to get this all done, at least most of what he's outlined, it could be an absolutely transformational year for the country.
One thing I've been thinking about is, there's some talk from Republicans, and there has been all along, that the left is pulling Biden to the left, that the extreme left wing is pulling him. I'm not sure that's what's happening. And maybe Biden's just really good at selling all of this, but he
doesn't feel like he's taking much pushing.
No, he doesn't seem like he's taking much pushing at all. It seems like he authentically wants to do these things and believes in these things. And I think that, that's one thing that I've been thinking about with the polling is, he's he's above 50%. And probably, he's polling a little better than he did when he won. And that has to be that independents, some number of independents, believe that he is not just a left-wing partisan, that he is the moderate who he ran to be. I don't know.
Well, it seems like a lot of the policies that he's pushing are actually very popular, right? Like they are policies that even raising taxes on the rich is something that actually polls pretty well, right? Like there is a very large constituency for these policies, but when it comes to Congress, the breakdown is just different in the way that, ideologically. But a lot of his policies are popular.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a risk here for him, though, because the policies poll popular, but we have seen when Congress does big stuff, controversial stuff on one party votes alone, it's tough and it doesn't always go over well with the public. The public doesn't always trust it. I mean, look at Obamacare, right? Like now the country is more and more happy with it, but Democrats did a really big something on their votes alone. And we spent a decade in like the political trenches over it. So I think if Democrats try to do this kind of major transformational legislating without any buy-in, I think it can also be pretty politically risky. And I think that Republicans see them potentially as a party overstepping right now, that they think they have a mandate that they don't really have. And part of the reason they're not super interested in getting on board with this is I think that they see a lot of opportunities to be able to win back the House and or Senate in 2022 and be sort of a blockade for the Biden administration. We've seen this story before, right?
Yeah.
I'm very curious about how much bipartisan support this administration is going to get from Republicans on things that Sue's pointing out, on things like immigration. I mean, I do think Biden has kind of rode a wave of momentum as, the coronavirus, as people are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Vaccines are coming out. People were excited about the relief bill. And I think he's been able to kind of capitalize on that and do really well. But I do wonder how long that runway will last. And I do feel like he's going to face some big, big challenges going forward because he has some other very large packages that he wants to push forward that are really going to be really tough. And I'm just not sure, considering how Washington is today, how divided it is today, how long he can keep this momentum going.
Franco, let's talk about one of those red flashing lights that you see in polling for Biden, which, people generally are happy with how he's handling the coronavirus. People are generally not happy with how he's handling immigration. And there are like any number of threads there. There are the unaccompanied minors who the administration has not been able to process at a pace that is satisfactory even to the administration. And then there's also the refugee numbers and sort of the mishandling by the administration, at least of the messaging on that.
Yeah, no question. They've had a big, big challenge with the border issue. I mean, the reality is this is an issue that so many presidents before have faced and struggled with. It's like no one, maybe except Trump. Not so many people want to focus on the border. They want to move on. They want to work on their big plans and issues, but they all get kind of dragged back into the border. It happened to Bush, it happened to Clinton, it happened to Reagan. And this is something that the Biden administration has really struggled with. They came in wanting to implement a more humane policy, make a big change from Trump, whose really focus was enforcement. But what happened was that, people in Central America, people who are fleeing poverty, who are fleeing corruption, who are fleeing real problems, did see an opportunity, a more welcoming administration coming aboard. And there was tens of thousands of people who were sensing this change and started arriving at the border. And you had thousands and thousands of children and teenagers cramming into detention centers on the border, in facilities built for adults. And it was a huge problem for this administration. The administration, Biden has tried to do his best to kind of help the kids, to focus on the children. But this response has really led to a lot of criticism, a lot of political criticism, not only from Republicans, but also from some Democrats, important centrist Democrats in border states who have raised concerns that this can't be done. And it's really an issue that he's kind of gone back and forth from very humane, the border, we're okay with certain things, to now he's saying the border is closed and you can't come in. And it's kind of like this back and forth. And I think what he's finding, as so many earlier presidents have, is like, this is an issue where it's really tough to satisfy everyone. It's really an issue that's hard to please anybody.
Yeah, I think about this issue. Immigration is something where there has not been comprehensive immigration legislation in how long? Like since the 80s, maybe. And it's just an issue where I'm not saying that Congress could fix it, but I am saying that executive action sure as heck isn't able to fix it. And you think about the gun violence issues. There hasn't been any sort of comprehensive gun-related gun violence prevention legislation since the 1990s. There are just, and Sue, I'm going to turn this over to you. There just seem to be a lot of problems that have built up, the race and policing issues that were brought to light by the George Floyd case. So many issues, voting rights, that are sort of remain unresolved because Congress has not been able to break through on these problems.
No, I mean, the past, and this isn't just a Biden problem, right? I mean, this has been a decade in politics that we've seen as like hyper partisanship increases, productivity decreases. It's gonna be a real problem for Biden. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why they're like pedal down on these economic stimulus bills that they can probably try to get through the special budget process, so they don't need Republicans, because they know what the other alternatives is, right? Like there isn't really a lot of options here for bipartisan governing, especially on these big tough issues like immigration, right? If it was easy, it would be done by now. And again, one of these other big debates we're having in the first 100 days that we're going to keep having for the next year or more is about the filibuster in the Senate and the pressure that Democrats are under to try to change the rules of the Senate to get things like voting rights legislation and gun rights legislation and any other number of things that have been stagnant on Capitol Hill for a really long time. Right now, they just don't have the votes to do it. Not only do they have the votes not to blow up the filibuster, even if they did, they don't have the votes to pass any of that stuff they want to do yet. They don't have the votes to pass comprehensive immigration reform. They don't have the votes to pass voting rights. So Democrats, they have big, ambitious ideas and very finite ways to get them done. And if they can't, there's not a lot of other alternatives to get things done, which is why I think you see this sort of focus on this. The other thing I would say that I think is worth mentioning in understanding Washington dynamics right now is the post-January 6th culture on the Hill. Right? Like the insurrection at the Capitol and what happened, I think is like fundamentally to understanding the atmospherics on the Hill and how little trust there is right now, especially in the House among Democrats towards Republicans. And in some ways, politically, potentially a little cynically, I'll say, I think it's helped Democrats stay unified because they have such a common enemy in the opposite party right now that I think they're able to stay together more. But the interest in trying to work with Republicans, even on any of this stuff, was just kind of broken after January 6th. And those are relationships that I don't think are going to be repaired anytime soon. And I don't think those are relationships that Joe Biden, for all of his talk about being a unifier, is really going to be able to do much to cure or to solve.
Ayesha, I don't want to let Afghanistan be forgotten.
You cannot forget about Afghanistan. I laugh, but it's very serious. I mean, look, the US has been in Afghanistan for basically 20 years. And Obama wanted to get out. Obviously, Trump wanted to get out. And now Trump left this deadline for Biden, this May deadline, where he had said he would have all the troops out with conditions. But instead, what happened was Biden said, we are going to get out and there are going to be no conditions. He said, if you have any conditions, the US will just end up there forever. So the US is getting out, and that is that. They're saying that times have changed, things have changed, and the way that they look at terrorism is different, and that they don't need to have as many troops there. Now, they're not the troops there that were there before. There's, at the height, I believe it was around 100,000. Now you have, a small force, a few thousand. The US will probably have to protect any diplomats that they have there. So some of that force may end up remaining, but for all intents and purposes, they say the US is pulling out.
Was that a small child I heard in the background, or was that a cat?
My children did start yelling. I don't know what they were excited about. They don't go to sleep at 8:30. So
I've been sleep training. Otherwise, mine wouldn't be down either.
Yeah.
So before we go to the next segment, let's just finish on this speech that President Biden is giving tomorrow in the House chamber. He's going to walk down the middle of the aisle, and there just aren't going to be that many people around him.
It's going to be a weird visual, right? I think there's only going to be about 200 people in the chamber, and there's usually about 16 to 1,800 people if you think of what you're compared to seeing before.
Yeah. And Franco, no guests in the First Lady's box and no designated survivor. Like, how are they going to make a TV show about it if there's no designated survivor?
I know. I mean, I'm actually a huge fan of the designated survivor. I mean, that was one of when I was a younger DC reporter. I think that was one of the funnest stories I got to write, was about kind of like all the steps that they take to kind of make sure that the designated survivor is safe and protected. And, a lot of times these guys are like people who are pretty low on the cabinet totem pole. So this is maybe the most power they ever get in the 4 years of the administration. But also, you mentioned the First Lady's box. I mean, to me, that's a huge, huge deal. I mean, the First Lady's box, the people that sit in the First Lady's box, they are the people that represent the president's priorities, what issues he's going to signal that are important to him, to his administration. And without that, I mean, it's a huge loss. And I'm very curious how they're going to try to make up for that. We saw how the Oscars tried to do that, trying to make it more movie-like.
So we're going to do the butt? No.
Yeah, in fact, I don't know.
Janet Yellen's going to do the butt just to keep it fresh.
Oh.
I don't know how the Oscars did it because I didn't watch, and it turns out their ratings were absolutely terrible, according to a statement from the former president of the United States that came out today. Oh gosh, I did it. I brought him up. Real quick, Sue. Tim Scott is going to give the official Republican response. It is the best and worst job in Washington.
Oh, it's thankless. Although this year it might be actually easier, because one of the reasons why it's always hard to follow the president is you have like the grandeur of the State of the Union and a packed house and crazy applause, and then it cuts to like a guy alone in a room. And this will probably be more like a guy almost alone in a room and a guy alone in a room. So he might be, it's probably the best year to probably get it. Tim Scott, he is someone who I think has been seen as sort of a rising star since he got to Congress. He's really popular. I mean, people just like him. He is, of course, the only Black Republican in the Senate. I think Republicans are also sensitive to sort of these issues of like racial equity, the fact that the George Floyd, verdict just came down. Tim Scott's been working really hard on things like police reform with Democrats to try to get a deal done. He's someone who's sort of like in the public profile right now, and not a bad person to put out as the face of the Republican Party. Like, obviously, still a party, overwhelmingly white, overwhelmingly male. They're trying to change that, and they want the party to look more like Tim Scott. So why not give him the biggest platform you can give someone on a night like that?
Yeah. We will be watching to see if there's any awkwardness, or actually, there will be awkwardness.
It's
going to be weird.
Yeah. All right. So Franco, I'm really sad, but we have to let you go.
So great to be here.
Thank you for joining After Dark.
Yeah.
And we will all be up late tomorrow night also for the joint address. You will be part of the special coverage, and I think you're in the podcast that we're taping at Dark 30. So thank you, Franco. And now it is time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Hi, Franco.
Have a good rest of the
Good night.
show.
Talk soon.
And now it's time for Ron Elving to struggle with what I struggled with, which is turning on the camera and the microphone. Oh, look,
Hey, Ron.
so much better at this than I am.
Yeah, hey, listen, I'm sorry to be a little late, and it appears that I'm appearing out of sequence.
It turns out that you did get the memo. It's a dark jacket and a light shirt.
Listen, I've been monitoring the chat, and it appears there are people doing shots whenever they hear the word bipartisan.
Bipartisan.
This is going to be a
Bipartisan.
bipartisan kind of night.
Shots. Okay, yeah.
Which is actually a great song for our current times, because you could get shots and shots.
Like shots.
Yeah.
Shot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. All right. Well, let's stop this.
That's a Domenico worthy dad joke, Tam.
She didn't like that one.
Oh. All right. Well, so we asked our audience to submit questions ahead of the show. We got a lot of them, so we're going to get to it. But if you with us here now have more questions, please drop them into the Q&A section, and we will do our very best to get to some of them. Do not put them in the chat. We will not find them there. But if you put them in the Q&A, we will do our best to get to some of them. Here we go with the first question. What is the history behind the 100-day benchmark? The 100-day standard seems fairly arbitrary. Historically, is there a better time frame that assesses the effectiveness of a president? Ron Elving, you want to start this off?
Okay, I'll be as brief as I can, but this goes back to Napoleon. All right, I'm just going to say I'm going to jump right ahead to the 20th century. And
Napoleon,
FDR,
yada, yada, yada. Here we go.
Waterloo, you remember. Anyway, jump ahead to FDR in 1933, his first 100 days in office. He not only passes a record number of bills and signs a lot of executive orders too, but he also more or less transformed the attitude of the federal government toward its entire job. So he redefined the federal government in the first 100 days of his administration. Did a lot of other stuff later on too, but those first 100 days were extraordinary. And so ever since, whenever we had gotten a new president, especially a Democratic president, they've been compared to those 100 days.
Well, and also, Sue, I feel like, I don't know, is a presidency like a loaf of bread or something, like where you only have a certain shelf life before you get into the midterms, you get into other issues, and sort of the ability to get things done, the halo you get at the beginning. Yes, Ayesha, you get moldy.
Yeah. It's also like, it is kind of arbitrary, right? Like, I don't know what the difference between like a day 100 and day 125 is, but we love these milestones, you know, they're tradition. We follow them, even in journalism. It's like 1 year since inauguration, 2 years from inauguration. Now we're in the midterms. Like, it's just the way that we kind of can set these metrics for, you know, to assess how the president's doing. And I think that works out well for him that it coincides with this address to the country, because this is also around the time when presidents feel like they should give an update on how they think they're doing as well.
Well, let's just say it's not a coincidence that it coincides with this address to the country, because like late April is not the normal time for a joint address to Congress. I mean, like, he could legit give a State of the Union at this point. Normally it's in February.
No, it's very delayed, and it seems very intentional. But now maybe, there may be something to having these a little bit later, because, the president now does have a lot more to say, right? You would think, maybe, because more has happened.
Yeah, I mean, this administration has they have stagecrafted absolutely everything. It's like they had a plan, they had their lists, they had it all mapped out minute by minute, and they just seem to be doing they're going with the plan. Okay, on to the next question. what is your take on Biden assigning Harris to be in charge of the border crisis? I want to believe it's an opportunity for her to shine, but I think I'm biased from watching too much Veep and the West Wing to trust that interpretation. And we should all just say that Veep is real life and West Wing not so much.
Yeah. Veep is very close to, to real life. But no, I do think that the decision, and they will be very quick to make clear that she is not in charge of the border crisis. She's in charge of the root causes. Now that is what Biden was in charge of in the Obama administration. So she is supposed to be the one reaching out to the Northern Triangle, to the leaders of these countries, doing these diplomatic efforts. And so it may be, I can't speak to the motivations of Biden in making this decision. It may truly be, and he does seem to be very mindful of the fact, because he was vice president, of how important it is to kind of let your vice president have some shine. And so it may have been something where he genuinely thought, I did this, why don't we allow her to have this diplomatic foreign policy thing? But it has definitely become something that right-wing pundits have, glommed onto and said, when are you going to the border? When are you going to the border?
Ron, I see you clasping your hands like you have some thoughts.
There's every reason to do this, except you have to think he was smiling a little bit and remembering the look on Obama's face when Obama said, hey, I did a job for you. And I'm also remembering the last guy in the White House who gave coronavirus to Mike Pence.
Oh, God. I mean, he did actually... Oddly enough, he did not give coronavirus to Mike Pence. Is one of the few people who did not get coronavirus in the last.
That's right. He was among the few. So actually, he probably would have been better off with a case of COVID than with the responsibility.
I don't know. That's a tough one. But it is true. It's a tricky thing. Like putting that on Vice President Harris did give it. It put her in the spotlight.
All right, let us move on to the next question. One of President Biden's biggest challenges was to lower the temperature of politics. Mm-hmm. To what extent has he done so in his first 100 days? Now, I don't know if he actually said this or if somebody else said it, but he seemed to be campaigning on the idea of being a guy who you could just forget about. Like, I'm going to be the president you don't have to think about when you wake up. I'm going to be the president you don't have to think about when you go to bed. And it seems like he's succeeding. I think, Sue, you have been obsessed with the Google searches.
Well, I think a couple of things. I don't think we can deny that Trump being kicked off of Twitter had an effect. Right? Like it really did. And there people have written about this. Like it has had an effect on like sort of the online conversation in politics and the tone of it. There has also been some data that like people aren't as interested in politics anymore. Like people aren't searching for Donald Trump and news related to the White House as much as they have been. And they're not filling that gap with Joe Biden searches, right? Like the political interest of the country has at least turn down the intensity. And I think that's true. I think also Biden, and this, Tam, like they're operating more like a traditional White House in that they don't tend to make news at all hours of the day and night. And so you're not waking up to crazy news cycles. They're not doing things on the weekends that aren't predictable. That led to that sort of like anything can happen at any moment feeling that we lived through for 4 years. It's much more methodical and businesslike in the way that like politics is usually done. And that also, I think, has turned down the temperature a bit. And he doesn't insult people, right? Like he's not. So from my vantage point, like you're not on the Hill all the time being like, hey, Rand Paul, the president just said that he thinks you're an idiot. What's your response? Like we're doing a lot. We had to do a lot of that. Like that was a lot of my job for the last 4 years. We're doing a lot less of that too. So I think all of those things have had an effect. Whether it's going to like make our politics better or like lend itself to more cooperation, I'm a little bit skeptical of, but the sort of like mood is a little less nasty.
Yeah, and though meanwhile, like there have been these outrages, like, oh, he's gonna say you can only eat one burger a week. There's been like a lot of outrage fake news that has sprung up.
He's been hard to land a punch
right,
on.
Yeah, I mean, that's in the right-wing ecosystem. I mean, none of these things are actually true. There have been some not true outrages. But yeah, it's not, it's just not quite.
It's like they have to make up things to get the outrage. And we have to point out, Biden is also an old white man, or older white man, respectfully. And so it is more difficult to do some of the demonization that was very easy to do with the first Black president. Some of the fear mongering, especially with a woman candidate or things of that nature. All of these things are complicated, but it's harder to do that with Joe Biden, especially. And then too, he's been around a very long time. He's been around for years. So kind of making him into this monster, he has not been defined in that way.
Yeah. Which may be why Kamala Harris, the vice president, I mean, yes, she's a historic vice president. And let's just say tomorrow night, it's going to be the first night that there is a president of the United States with two women behind him at a joint address to Congress, not the State of the Union. That's a big difference. But Vice President Harris gets an outsized amount of negative attention.
Yeah, but it's because people think she's going to run for president in 2024. Yeah. Right? They're getting it in now because they're trying to build the ground campaign because she's largely undefined. Like, if we know Joe Biden, there's still a lot about Kamala Harris we don't know, or she doesn't have a brand ID in the country as strong as he does. And part of the reason why Republicans spend all their time attacking her and not Joe Biden on things like the border is because they think she's going to run in 2024 and they want to start the oppo now. I think their intentions there are pretty clear.
Yeah. Moving on. Oh, Ron.
All of which just proves that the president of the United States is not necessarily solely responsible for the temperature of the political climate. There are an awful lot of people out there trying to influence the political climate. And most of them who are most avid about it are trying to raise that temperature.
Yeah, well, because there's outrage sells. Outrage.
There's money to be made. Yeah.
There is money to be made. There is fundraising to be done. The outrage, the fear, the anger, like happiness is not an emotion that really raises a for NPR.
Right.
Yes, NPR.org/ I don't even know.
Support your local station.
Yes, support your local member station.
All right, so a lot of you had questions about 2022 and 2024 because it is never too early. So let's go to those. With midterm elections approaching next year and the new voting laws placed in Georgia, can you expect Republicans to effectively take back seats in Congress?
I mean, I'm quitting the predictions game, so I don't know, but a couple of things I would say about that. The voting law in Georgia, I think, is fascinating because, yes, there is a perception of it, and we'll see how it's implemented, that it's going to make it harder for Democrats to vote. At the same time, when you pass laws like that, I think there's also the laws of unintended consequences, where it has the effect of lighting on fire Democratic voters to do whatever it takes to cast a ballot and get there in November. And that is anger, which is, as you just said, Tam, one of the best, most animating forces in politics. So Republicans may have overshot there, especially if their own base isn't as animated to vote in 2022. When it comes to Congress, it's just the thing that Republicans have to their advantage, which is why I think everyone's going to talk about this as them having the advantage going into 2022, is history and precedent, right? Like, midterm elections tend to be good for the party that's not in control of the White House. And in most modern years, when one party controls all the levers, the House, the Senate, and the White House, something usually flips in the midterms. This country, as much as we might not believe it, actually seems to like divided control of government. So they have all of those sort of fundamentals in their favor. But I think that, like, we're living in an era where the fundamentals are being rewritten. And I don't know if Biden is able to pass these kinds of legislation that we talked about earlier, if that makes him a really popular president in 2022, then that changes the dynamic. If they don't get anything done, if it looks like a party that's not in control, then yeah, things are going to be pretty good for Republicans. And I think Republicans are playing from a very safe playbook, which is be against everything. Just be the anti-party to what that party's for and pledge to be the alternative, or at least the stopgap on their power, the thing that can hold them back. And that's a winning playbook. It's worked for them a bunch, and it seems to be pretty much what they're going to try and do this time as well.
Yeah, though, I don't know, at some point you probably have to say what you want to do too.
No, actually, I don't think you do. Well, you might think differently,
Oh,
but
little naive, Tam.
I don't know. I don't actually know if you have
nice.
to put forward a clear alternative agenda. I mean, Republicans, well, their Obamacare plan, I'm still waiting. Their other Obamacare.
Oh, it's coming in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
There are a couple of exceptions to that precedent of a new president getting clobbered in his first midterm. And they're kind of illustrative because George W. Bush had a great first midterm after just 2 years in office. Now, most of that was about 9/11, but part of it too was that he did not have a great coattails election in 2000. He didn't bring a lot of people in with him. Neither did Jack Kennedy in 1960, and he had a pretty decent 1962. Again, there were issues that helped him, but it was because there weren't a lot of vulnerable seats created by coattails when he was elected. And the same thing is clearly true of Joe Biden. He did not bring in a lot of new seats in the House. In fact, they lost seats in the House, a lot more than they expected to. So I don't think that that particular dynamic can be predicted one way or the other.
All right, let us move on to some less meaty questions and less newsy questions, because we're here to have fun. It's after dark. Question here: how has reporting life changed since covering the Trump administration? Have you gotten more sleep in the last 100 days than you've been getting before? My attempts at sleep training my children have helped me sleep more. I haven't gotten a call at 1 a.m. to tell me the president has COVID. So that is one night that I have not, I'm making up that sleep debt. And it is more predictable, though I will say that the Biden White House, which is something the Trump White House almost never did, has a tendency to have evening calls with reporters where they lay out on background the policy initiative that they will be announcing the next day. And it's also very predictable, but it does mean we work late sometimes.
Yeah. No, it's been busy. Like there's been a lot going on. They've been doing a lot. It is not as chaotic. We can certainly say that. And it is not as, there was just a different, not just a tone, we don't want to talk about tone, but there was just like a different nature to the beast of the Trump administration. Like it was just a thing, and it was a roller coaster, and we was all on it, and you was screaming. Like, you were being thrown left and right. This is very busy, and lots of things are happening, but it's not like a roller coaster. You're not like
like a carousel.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a carousel or the swings. Like
sometimes they move kind of fast.
Yeah, like the swings can be scary, it's like you're kind of out, like it's very, it's kind of like that.
But,
Can I just clarify the question a little?
Yeah.
Question asking if we had gotten more sleep in the last 100 days than in the entire previous 4 years. Because that would be a yes. But one other word we should throw in here is leaks.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will eventually.
Yeah.
The White House was leaking books by this time.
Oh, and I mean, like by this point, they were on to their second or third national security advisor, at least the second national security advisor. Like there was huge tumultuous change. And this time it's been very steady. I mean, they had one, the Office of Management and Budget Director nominee failed or couldn't get through because of mean tweets. Who'd have thunk? Mean tweets.
The irony
could be a liability. But it's just been very predictable, I guess. And so let's move on to the next question. Who is the favorite person you've interviewed for an NPR Politics story?
Oh, that's good. I don't have like a favorite. I interview a lot of people, but I just interviewed Janelle Jones. I can't say she's like the favorite, but I really like that interview and I like the story. Janelle Jones is the chief economist at the Labor Department, the first Black woman to hold that position. She coined the term Black women best. I really like that interview.
I have an answer, but it's super weird.
Oh, I want to hear that.
Sometimes I think the most memorable people I interview are not politicians, because that's like politicians actually all kind of talk like politicians, like very rarely are you like, whoa, that was really interesting. One of the most interesting people I've interviewed while I was at NPR was in 2016 during the primaries in Iowa, when you talk to people at the political events, and it was at a Marco Rubio event. And when you interview someone, you like talk about how they're going to vote and this and that, but then you also will be like, can you tell me what town you're in and what do you do for a living? And you kind of try to get information about the person, just, good journalism tactics. And I talked to this one guy who was essentially a forensic pet detective. And his job was he would investigate when there was mass animal deaths with no explanation, like when birds like fall out of the sky, or like when sheep in New Zealand all die in a field. And he would travel the world investigating mass pet deaths. And I think about that guy all the time, because that is my treatment for a Netflix show that I want to pitch one day.
Wait, that person's name Ace Ventura?
Right? It's like Ace Ventura noir, like dark Ace Ventura.
After dark.
Yeah, that went to a dark place. I thought you were going to say he looked for like lost bunnies and stuff like that. Yeah. I did not think you were going to say.
And he's like one of the few people in the world that does it. And he lives in Iowa because they have lots of livestock. Like he's like, he's well-versed in animals, but he had traveled all over the world. I think I still have his business card. I think it's on my desk in the office, but I haven't been there in forever. But yeah, he was the most memorable person that I've interviewed at NPR. And I hope to meet him again someday.
Let's move on to sort of lightning roundish. What is the best movie, TV show about politics?
Game of Thrones.
Ron, what do you got?
Well, I'll throw out an old movie, which is called The Best Man, and it's about a nominating convention doesn't say Democratic Party, but that's what it is, and it's absolutely fabulous. It's got a lot of history. It's got a lot of great performances, and no one's ever seen it. It was written by Gore Vidal, the novelist and sometimes scriptwriter, and a lot of people like Advise and Consent, but I think of the movies about Washington, The Best Man is as good as any.
I think when it comes to movies, it's a little bit of a cheat because it's also kind of a journalism movie, but I think it's about like the intersection with the people we cover. There's a movie called The Paper. Have you guys ever seen that with Michael Keaton? It's a great journalism movie, and it's hilarious, and it's like more real about how life really is. TV shows, a little bit of a throwback, but it's not that far back. The Good Wife. If you ever watched that, I always thought that was the show about politics that was really the most like politics actually is in the modern world.
Okay.
I'm just going to go with Broadcast News because it's my favorite movie and it's about Washington, but it's not my favorite movie, but it's a great movie. It's a great movie. Okay. We are going to questions from the chat, which is exciting. Becca asks, Ayesha and Susan, did you order matching Rent the One runway dresses?
This is not a dress. It's just a top. And to be clear, I am wearing sweatpants and Birkenstocks right now. The magic of radio.
No, although we could, this is a dress from Rent the Runway. I bought it, so it's probably been someone on watching this may have worn this dress before. Please let me know if you've worn this dress before. Because I may be wearing your exact dress. It was 80% off. So I just got today. I was very excited.
But we will be ready. We will be ready for whenever the balls
doors opens up.
But you know what? We can almost already go to some sort of outdoor happy hour. We could wear this, or we could wear this to the vaccine appointments. Like there are so many places you can wear these dresses.
Yes.
Right,
absolutely.
Ron?
Absolutely.
Wegmans, yes.
Okay, here's a question for me. And we only have time for a couple more, so I will take this one. Who is the lady in the painting over Tam's shoulder? So I'm trying to figure out, okay. So that is a picture that my friend, like an artist rendering that my friend had done for me of Cokie Roberts,
Cool.
the great NPR founding mother, who passed away a couple of years ago and was a bit of a mentor to me, and an absolute inspiration. Below her, I framed the Gwen Ifill stamps. Gwen Ifill was the longtime NewsHour anchor and also an absolute inspiration. And then the license plate is kind of fun. Fun story with that is that I got really excited. I was like, oh my gosh, I can get NPR nerd. And I ordered it super fast without thinking about it. And then I told my husband and he was like, do you really want to like peacock like that? Do you want to drive around with that on your car? Because then like people will talk to you and then you'll have to either lie or admit that you are Tamara Keith, and that would be weird.
Oh, really?
So I have a different license plate now.
I think you should have kept it on there.
You know what? I think the real story is he didn't want to be driving the minivan and have to have awkward conversations.
That's fair. Plus, he hates NPR.
Also. All right. So second to the last question, Ayesha, who was your favorite housewife on Real Housewives of Salt Lake City? Your Can't Let It Go got this person hooked.
And okay, and one of them, she is going to, well, she's got indicted. Oh my gosh. But my favorite was Crazy Mary. Oh my goodness. I guess I shouldn't call her crazy. Mary, who had married her sort of grandfather, even though she fell off towards the end. It wasn't her blood grandfather, it was her step grandfather, but it kind of fell off towards the end, but I always loved her. But the other lady is the lady who got indicted. I can't believe she got indicted. So, oh my goodness.
I know nothing about this. I just know that back when I used to go to the grocery store, it seems like there's always a housewife getting indicted on the cover of the magazines.
It does seem to happen a lot. And it does raise the question, why do these people go on TV and then when they know oftentimes that they're under investigation
and then they do the crimes
for financial crimes and then like show off their wealth? It doesn't really make sense, but fame, right? It's a drug.
Ayesha, now would be a good time to plug your podcast where you recap Real Housewives episodes.
Yes, so that will be coming soon. Real Housewives, Married at First Sight, all of that. I'll be ready for you.
Okay, one
last. And we haven't said bipartisan recently, so bipartisan.
Drink. Okay, and last question, Ron, Jackie asks, if the first 100 days was a drink, what kind of drink would it be? And cheers.
Stormy.
Dark and stormy.
Is that a drink? That's a drink?
Yeah. It's like rum and ginger ale.
Dark rum and ginger ale.
Yeah, it's not I don't particularly think it's a good drink, but it would fit the first 100 days.
Yeah, it has been a little dark and stormy.
Yeah, that whole pandemic thing.
Well, maybe the next 100 days can be a, martini of some kind or
sparkling rosé.
Moscato, yes, some Moscato. I like rosé too.
All right, so we are going to move on from there. Thank you all so much for the awesome questions. And it is now time for the part of the show where we talk about the things that we just can't let go of, politics or otherwise. But rather than sharing a can't let it go from this week, which is only 2 days old, we have been challenged, and for me it was a real challenge, to think about what we can't let go of for the first 100 days of Biden's presidency. And this, of course, does not have to relate to Biden at all. Ron Elving, what can't you let go of?
Okay, a few years ago, the humor website, The Onion, humor magazine, put out a list of parody headlines for our dumb century. And they were the dumbest headlines for a year. And here is one typical Onion headline: world's largest metaphor hits iceberg. Human pride and so forth, and down it goes. All right. Featuring this mock front page, which I think kind of says it all for the sense of humor of the Onion. And let's face it, the Titanic was a metaphor long before it was a movie. Now, already this year, we have a pretty good nominee for one of the dumber historical events of our century, and that has got to be the ship that got stuck in the Suez.
Yeah.
This is a 1,500-foot cargo ship that's more than 4 football fields. And supposedly the wind got a little heavy and there was some sand and it got stuck on one bank and then on the other. And they were afraid it was going to be stuck for weeks. There were 400 ships waiting out there. And, you know, this has got to be like the ultimate analog tragedy, right? I mean, this has nothing to do with the 21st century, except that it's still happening. And of course, it also became a metaphor for our global economy, interdependence of trade, et cetera, and then they got it loose and everybody forgot about it.
Yeah, but apparently it's still there. I was just hearing on Marketplace tonight.
It's not blocking the canal, but there's an insurance beef and the Egyptians don't want to let it go until they get paid.
Oh, so the Egyptians can't let it go.
That's right. Very good.
Men were obsessed with that stuck boat. I think something about it made men want to say, "Oh, I think you could fix this." Like,
right. I know how you could get it out.
Yeah,
I got an idea.
Let me do it, honey.
Probably how it got there. Okay, so I'm gonna go next. I've got this fun video that the director of the National Institutes of Health posted earlier this month. Francis Collins is a man of many talents, and apparently he can accompany himself in a parody-ish version of Here Comes the Sun. It's like Weird Al meets a PhD in whatever he has a PhD in. Here's a little bit of it.
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. I say it's all right. NIHers, it's been a long, dark COVID winter. Teleworking, can you believe it's been a year? Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. I say it's all right.
So, I mean, it's a sweet song thanking the people of NIH for all of the hard work that they have done over the last year. And let's just say over the last 15, 20 years to help develop the technology that meant that we can all have vaccines in our arms, that mean that someday we'll actually be able to see each other and we can hug our parents and do all of the things. And what I really can't let go of, and I don't know how long I'm not going to be able to let go of, but I can't let go of how grateful I am that, like, today my parents were in my house hugging my son. That I was able to go out to dinner and sit outdoors without a mask with my friends who are all now vaccinated. My brother posted this thing on Facebook, which I hope he won't kill me for now broadcasting to the world or all however many people are on the Zoom, but he wrote, wanted to share my vaccination experience, Pfizer first and second dose, a little bit of pain at the injection site, felt a bit sleepy, but now more than a couple of weeks past the shot, I'm feeling lighter, so much lighter. I've got 25% of my brain back from constant worry. And I just feel so much lighter.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm so excited. I'm so happy for you that your parents get to be there and be with their kids and stuff. I said 2020 was the year of the sad grandparent and 2021 is the year of the happy grandparent.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's such a blessing. We got to see my 94-year-old grandfather, who's fully vaccinated for the first time in over a year last weekend. So it's really a blessing.
It's just a weight lifted.
Yeah.
Ayesha, what can you not let go of?
Okay, well, after these very like happy, kind of upbeat things, I have like a weird, creepy thing.
Is it about birds?
I'm following this with
Or
something
bunnies.
weird and creepy, but
Is it bipartisan?
I can't.
It's definitely bipartisan.
Totally bipartisan.
But I can't let go of it. This happened. I saw it first at the end of Black History Month, but it's this thing called deep nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes, you can use this AI technology to make old pictures come to life. And it is haunting and creepy. And I think they're going to show a picture of it, because if not, I just say I'll sound, why. Oh, yes, here you go. That looks okay. And then look.
Oh, that's weird. I just got weird chills looking at that.
And that's like not the only one. Like there are other ones, and they're like looking. And everyone knows I love horror. To me, it looks like someone, obviously, great honor to Frederick Douglass.
Yeah.
The great abolitionist. I'm sure he's a very nice guy. He has no reason to haunt anyone's dreams. But in the picture, when he starts moving like that, he looks like he's gonna come out and get us all. And he also looks like, why are you doing this to me? But he also, he kind of looks handsome too. So it's like a mix of
very
feelings.
handsome there, to be honest with
He
you.
is very intense.
But it's weird. It's like creepy. But ever since I've seen these like deep nostalgias, I have not been able to let it go. It's in my mind. It hasn't haunted my dreams yet, but I'm sure it probably will soon. But it's just very creepy and weird. And
we're all gonna have Frederick Douglass dreams tonight.
Yeah. Nobody told me Frederick Douglass was a model.
I'm
gonna have sexy Frederick Douglass dreams tonight.
Oh my goodness.
Ron has left the
Ron
building.
just left the building.
Oh, look at that picture. Oh yeah.
It's not there. There's nothing there.
As long as he doesn't come off the screen, I think. Oh, look, see? Oh my God.
I don't know what you're seeing.
Of course, Ron has a Frederick Douglass book, like within hand-reaching zone of his house.
So what can't you let go of?
The thing I can't let go of, when I'm old and gray and look back on the first 100 days of the Biden administration, the thing I'm going to think about most is Meghan and Harry's interview with Oprah.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
I was obsessed with the interview at the time. I still think about it a lot. I think it for a couple of reasons. It was like the rare, riveting television interview. Like they just don't happen anymore. And it was just like all the revelations about the royal family. It also happened after I had just binge watched like 4 seasons of The Crown. And so I've been like steeped in royal family trashiness. And then the memes, as you can see, like everything that came out of it, it was such like a cultural moment, and the Oprah, wait moment. I've been obsessed with it. I'm now like unabashedly pro Meghan. I'm really a big Meghan Markle fan. Her and Harry are apparently trying to get into more politics and live in the country now. So like maybe they listen to the podcast, maybe they want to hang out. I don't know.
I mean, yes.
Oh my gosh, we should try
silent or silenced? Were you
silent?
Susan, what? Okay. Were you silent or silenced?
Silenced.
All right. I think we're gonna silence ourselves. Let us call that a wrap for tonight, but thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope to do this again soon. Be sure to check out our special coverage of President Biden's address tomorrow night. You can find us on your local radio station on npr.org, and of course in your podcast feeds after the speech ends. You can also ask your smart speaker to play NPR, but I'm not going to do it right now or she might start talking. Not going to name names. Thank you to Allie Prescott and the NPR Presents team for making this event happen alongside Chloe Weiner from NPR Politics. We'll be sending a survey link in the chat and an email you'll get tomorrow. Please fill that out and let us know how we did. We will be back in your feeds late tomorrow night. Thanks to all of you for listening, and stay safe.
Bipartisan, bipartisan, bipartisan.
Oh,
Bipartisan.
I forgot to do the poll. Do we want to do the poll? Do we want to just call it a night? What do you guys think?
I think we already said bye to everybody. So
Yeah. You can tell us on the NPR Politics Facebook group which of our cligs resonated with you most. Sorry for forgetting the poll.
Yes, but it's okay. Shots.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.